Fantasy as a genre may feel modern with its elves, dragons, and magical worlds, but its roots run much deeper. It takes us back to the very beginning of human storytelling. To understand the origin of fantasy, we need to travel thousands of years into the past, to a time when myths and oral traditions explained the mysteries of the world. Fantasy begins with mythology, the earliest form of storytelling. Ancient civilizations used myths to make sense of their surroundings. These stories explained why the sun rose, why storms raged, and why humans dreamed. They were not limited by reality. Instead, they explored boundless imagination. Think of the Greek myths, stories of gods like Zeus and creatures like the Cyclops, or the Norse sagas, with frost giants and fire-breathing dragons. Even further back, Mesopotamian myths like the Epic of Gilgamesh told of demigods, enchanted forests, and the quest for immortality. These were the first fantasy tales filled with magic and wonder. Folklore also shaped fantasy. Across the world, people told stories of fairies, trolls, and shapeshifters. These tales reflected the landscapes they came from. For example, the dark forests of Northern Europe gave rise to the Brothers Grimm's fairy tales, full of witches, enchanted castles, and wolves in the shadows. In contrast, the deserts of Arabia inspired 1001 Nights. This collection of fantastical stories, like Aladdin and Sinbad the Sailor, featured jinn, flying carpets, and magical treasures. As storytelling evolved, so did fantasy. During the Middle Ages, fantasy took the form of chivalric romances. Knights, quests, and heroic deeds dominated tales like Le Morte d'Arthur, The Legend of King Arthur, and the Knights of the Round Table. These stories combine magic and morality, exploring themes like bravery, love, and honor. Wizards like Merlin and magical objects like Excalibur became central figures. At the same time, religion influenced fantasy. Dante's Divine Comedy offered surreal visions of heaven, hell, and purgatory, blending faith with imagination. During the Renaissance, fantasy moved into literature. Writers like William Shakespeare infused their plays with fantastical elements. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, mischievous fairies brought magic to the stage. In The Tempest, the sorcerer Prospero used enchantments to shape events. Shakespeare's work proved that fantasy could coexist with deep human emotions and social themes, a blend that remains important to the genre. The 19th century marked the rise of modern fantasy. Writers like Mary Shelley and Edgar Allan Poe explored the darker side of imagination. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein combined Gothic horror with speculative fiction, telling the story of man playing God. Meanwhile, Edgar Allan Poe delved into the surreal and the macabre, crafting tales that blurred the line between reality and fantasy. In the 20th century, fantasy emerged as its own genre. J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis revolutionized the field with their epic worlds. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings introduced Middle-earth, a richly detailed world with its own languages, histories, and peoples. C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia used allegory to tell magical stories about talking animals, enchanted wardrobes, and eternal winters. These authors didn't just tell stories, they built entire universes, inspiring generations of writers and readers. Fantasy's greatest strength is its ability to ask, what if? What if there's a world beyond that wardrobe? What if dragons roam the skies? What if magic were real? These questions allow us to escape, but they also encourage us to confront universal truths. Fantasy is more than just escapism. It's a way to reflect on ourselves in the world we live in. And so, the journey of fantasy continues. From ancient myths to modern epics, fantasy is the essence of human imagination. It allows us to dream of worlds beyond our own, to explore the impossible, and to find meaning in the magical. Fantasy isn't just a genre, it's a timeless celebration of the stories that make us human.